Hello and welcome to another episode of the Perception Podcast with me, your host, Caroline Partridge. Today I'm joined by Ideation coach and founder of Think Different Nation, Tye Glover. After being labelled as learning disabled and consigned to a future of manual work, Tye describes how the spectre of imposter syndrome haunted him for years, until he finally found the belief to create his own business, teaching people how to connect to their ideas and creativity. Tye also explains the theory behind NCP, or neurocreative programming, and how Star Trek really does influence science. Please join me as we look at life through a different lens. Tye! Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming onto the program today.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me. It's I'm very much so looking forward to the conversation.
I know we've had a little bit of a pre-chat, which was really great. And as you said, we should have actually recorded some of those things. Never mind. I'm sure this will be as fantastic. So now you are an ideation coach. That is what you do. That is your title.
Right.
I would think that not many listeners probably are familiar with that term. I wasn't very familiar with ideation, although from the root of the word, I kind of was like, oh, well, it must be something to do with creation.
Right.
But it would be great if you can tell us a little bit about your work, your coaching work, the methodologies that you use, because it's very much in the world of perception, rooted in the world of perception. And what I'd like to do before we go down that path is really, as I do with a lot of my guests, is to ask them how they got to this moment here. How did you get to
Right.
Just a simple answer. No. How did you get to this point here with working as an ideation coach? Because I know, lots of people have stories that are very really diverse. So it'd be great if you could share with us yours.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a long answer. But it's something that actually, there's an ancient law of correspondence that says that nothing comes from nothing. And so in order for me to have developed the understandings that I have today, I had to go through a long journey. And some of those experiences really were the key experiences that helped me to develop the understandings that I have today, I remember back in, for example, fifth grade, I had a real pivotal situation that occurred. And I remember being in the grade, and I remember the teacher saying that you've got to take a test because you didn't do well on the first one, and you were out the next day. And so I think you were sick, so I want you to take it again. And I'm sitting there thinking, I must have really done poorly on that test. So anyway, I take this test, and I don't hear anything more about it. But I find that I'm tracked, and I'm automatically heading to a certain type of a process as far as my education is concerned. And it's not until I really get into ninth grade where someone tells me that it's a counselor in my high school, and I'm going down there for career advice. And he tells me, well, you should really consider a career in the trades, because your IQ came back at 90, which means that you're going to be better off in doing activities and things that are aligned towards you using physical movement as opposed to thought and mind processing.
Oh my God. Sorry, Tye, but just to interject there, it was just like, I was like, what? So they decided at fifth grade to label you. And then 4 years later, you're told, without any knowledge that you've been kind of labeled as, this person who has an IQ of XYZ or whatever it is.
Below average, right.
Below average, that you should then just not expect to achieve.
That was the powerful mindset. It's amazing how that little score that you really don't think much about at the time as far as being in ninth grade, that it carries through. And so here I went on to college after starts and stops and starts and stops. As a matter of fact, I went through one stop where I was working for my father. I stopped going to college, working for my father, and I finally decided I'm going to give this up. I recognized I wasn't smart enough, at least based on the efforts I was putting in, to make it through college, because I really didn't know how to make it through college. Mm-hmm. How do you study? How do you think? I didn't really know the process of thinking. And it sounds like it's an intuitive thing, but it requires work. And here I'm living in Washington, D.C. with my aunt, and I'm going to clubs and working as a tractor trailer driver again. And I'm listening to these people in these clubs, my age, with beautiful cars and with beautiful women. And I'm thinking, their conversations are so I can't even say the word, shallow, that I really started to recognize my value, the things that I think about as compared to the things that they are naturally inclined to have those conversations about, the sports, the other things about women, cars, whatever it was. They really weren't thinking about anything from the standpoint of try to advance where they were in their life. They were happy with where they were. And that summer, I went back to college. I finished up. I went and enrolled directly back into grad school. And I finished up. I went into the career of, consulting and working in corporate America. But the whole time, every time I moved from one step to the other, I recognized I'm not as smart as these other people, though.
So that was, you still had this carry on, even though you'd gone through grad school, you still had this label hanging around your neck, like
74% of all people have imposter syndrome. And that was very strong with me because I was told through a test that I was less intelligent. And I also, in that specific area, that is, but I also recognized that I was inclined to go in other directions where I was very good and where I noticed things that other people wouldn't have ever noticed. And we oftentimes think of ourselves as being the core of what everybody else sees. You see it my way. We can't really recognize what else someone else is not seeing or seeing. And so, it wasn't until I started recognizing that I have a particular way in which I'm experiencing, that I'm looking at things, that I'm taking note of particular operations of forms and functions, and that starting to recognize how these things are becoming the key pieces of information, or what Steve Jobs would refer to as dots. Steve Jobs used the expression of you can't connect the dots by looking forward. You've got to look backwards.
Yeah.
And he mentioned how he didn't know whether it was karma or fate or whatever. Well, my whole process of ideation teaches how to connect dots through all those different pieces of the whatevers, because it looks at the way we experience the world through our 5 basic senses, directly aligned with NLP. But instead of looking at the relationships that NLP allows you or has you examine, it looks outwards at the patterns that we move through within our lives. Everything we deal with is a pattern. The rituals we're involved in, maybe it's the sports games that we watch, it's the work that we go to, it's the way we take our showers. It's all in patterns. But with NCP, it has you or supports you in being able to detect the anomalies. Normally, we move through differences that we're not used to. We move through them without any examination of them. But NCP teaches you how to identify the specific patterns that can become the raw materials for, again, all the ideas that you will ever create, just by examining, perceiving your experiences in a different way, in a more intuitive way.
Okay. Right. Whoa.
I said a lot. Okay. I'm so sorry.
No, that's really great. I think what we need to do, though, is just because I was kind of like, we went from NLP to then NCP, but can you just please clarify for people who maybe haven't come across NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, can you just please outline that in its sort of purest form?
Great question. There was no background there. NLP is something that's called neuro-linguistics programming, not neural. I think it's linguistics processing, which is what you'll often find when you Google it, but neuro-linguistics programming. And it was developed back in the late 70s by a gentleman, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, but they created this logic and this understanding of a methodology that we experience the world through what we see, through what we can understand from what we saw, and what we can recall from what we had seen in the past. apply to hear, smell, taste, touch. And those are all of our experiences. And the interpretation that we have of those experiences determine how we feel at any given point in time. Now, when it comes to relationships, my interpretation of what you say to me, how you say it, and how I understand what you said has a direct impact on what I'm going to say in response.
Yeah.
NLP allows you to recognize how you're taking that information, and the linguistics is the how we're processing or what we're saying to ourselves about those words, about our interpretations. And then the programming is how we are going to respond as a result, whether I'm going to be happy and therefore move forward in a positive way, sad, negative, or whatever. It's how we experience and therefore record our reality. I use the logic of NLP from the standpoint of that experience and the perception, but that's what allowed me to really get the understanding of the other side of NLP, which is, again, NLP is that the relationships that we have with ourselves and with others.
Yeah.
I look more so at a much bigger picture because I'm looking outward at how we experience everything else around us, our reality in general, all the patterns that we move through within our daily life.
Brilliant. So that's the NCP,
the neural creative programming, and the creative aspect has to do with the inputs, the dots that Steve Jobs spoke of when he created that expressive line.
How do you use that when you're working, with the ideation with your clients? How does this work?
Everything operates according to a process. Then it's a matter of helping the person to identify the processes that they are carrying out that they don't even know that they're carrying out any longer. But those are their sweet and special spots.
Okay. So just for clarity there, so it's helping somebody identify unconscious behaviors.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect.
What I call their instinctive advantages.
Okay. So instinctive
things that they are naturally inclined to do without even noticing them, because just like driving a car, we don't know that we had to be taught how to drive the car. Everything's in automatic fashion at that point.
Okay.
But if you were to go to drive another device that wasn't a car, but that was similar but different, you would recall the experience of the car in order to deduce what would have to happen based on this new structure. You have something from which to go on.
Yeah. Okay. So you'd use your past experience and your past knowledge to be able to help inform the problem, I suppose, or whatever it is in
the situation.
Yeah, the situation, right. to decipher the current situation. Okay.
Right.
Brilliant.
But I mean, for any idea that you're going to have, there has to be at least one situation that occurs. There has to be a challenge. There's two types. There's either negative challenges that we experience that create our ideas. We have to find a way out of that particular situation. So we create solutions to that situation. Or there are positive challenges where we want to move to the next level of something, and therefore we strive and we think our way through to the next level of that something. So there's only the two types of challenges that we could be dealing with.
This material in an excerpt from a longer podcast or video. Follow link in description to learn more.